Hi fantasy fiction fans, and welcome to Myth and Magic, a fantasy writer's kit bag. I'm fantasy writer Neil Mack, the author of Moondog and the Reed Leopard, and I want to share my love of folklore, local history and nature mythology with writers and creatives like you on my regular podcasts. It's designed with fellow indie publishers and writers in mind, but all fans of fantasy fiction are very welcome to join in. In my fantasy writer's kit bag, writers, artists and creatives will find lots of ideas and discussion about things such as potions, dark arts, fabulous creatures, folktale studies, nature lore, and the interesting history behind the myth and magic that underpins our understanding of the fictional universe. Hello fantasy fiction fans! Today I want to ask a question: what does wonder mean? W-O-N-D-E-R. And how would you employ wonder in your fantasy fiction? As an emotion, wonder is often compared to awe. Oh, it's awesome, man. Though awe involves an element of respect and a fear. In fact, there's a fear response in awe rather than pure joy. But wonder is a joyous surprise, and it's usually produced by an unexpected or very rare set of circumstances or a remarkable series of events. The 16th century philosopher Descartes suggested that the emotional reaction to unexpected phenomena is wonder. And wonder, he suggests, is more than just mere admiration, it's astonishment. Wouldn't you like to bring astonishment to your readers? I'm sure they will. Perhaps wonder can be linked to curiosity through a simple equation. And here's the equation. Are you ready? Curiosity brings surprise, and surprise brings wonder. The Polish-born American philosopher Heschel, H-E-S-C-H-E-L, once wrote, "Wonder is a key emotion in living a worthy life." I would like to add, wonder is a key emotion that you should try to incorporate in your fantasy fiction. It's worth trying to evoke wonder in all of your creative writing, but especially it's important when you're writing fantasy fiction or science fiction. Think of it this way: if a concept is unfamiliar to a reader, then he or she will turn pages quicker and faster and even more to try to understand it. And if it's difficult to understand at first, but it's worth it, if the payoff is worth it, and of course the pages can be read easily, then it will generate more interest, more intention and more enthusiasm. And when there's a satisfying resolution, then that will evoke great pleasure. I've read lots of science fiction stories where I didn't really understand what was going on in not only the first page, not only the first paragraph, but sometimes not only the first chapter. Even in the second and third chapter, you still don't get what's going on. One of my favourite books is The Clockwork Orange, and you have to learn a brand new language in that. It evoked wonder though, because it was an unfamiliar concept for me. I kept turning pages to try to understand more. It was difficult to understand, I admit it, but it was worth it because it was easy to read and it generated interest, it generated enthusiasm, and there was a satisfying resolution, and it evoked great pleasure. So, follow the wonder equation in your story ideas. Create curiosity, peculiarity, rarity, distinction, strangeness, juxtaposition, and exoticism. Because curiosity brings surprise. So delight your reader by giving rewards for hard work and provide them with compensations. And surprise brings wonders. Resolve all the puzzles that you set, provide explanations, satisfactory explanations, and bring a satisfying conclusion. If you want to bring wonder to your fantasy fiction, create curiosity, because curiosity brings surprise, and surprise brings wonder. So this week I want to look in depth at a particular subject which will be very relevant to any person who's thinking of, or they have already started, or they're about to start their fantasy fiction writing project. And it's about creating a system of magic. So I want to go into some depth in about how you would create your own system of magic and some of the rules around creating a system of magic. But first, let me just start by explaining about the weaknesses of magic. If a hero or a main character can snap their fingers to make everything suddenly seem okay, or they can raise a loved one from the dead, or they can stop rushing bullets in their teeth, or they can fly at will, or they can transform into any creature they want to, or they can travel in time, and they regularly act as if they're indestructible and almighty, then where's the tension in that? Where's the drama? Because your readers will soon get bored with a Superman or Superwoman character who possesses divine superpowers and they can snap their fingers to resolve any conflict. Now, I've always thought that this was Superman's biggest flaw. I mean, for example, why bother with a full plot? Superman could wake up in the morning, he could save everybody, and then go back to sleep. And of course, a character is, whether he's good or whether he's bad, is only interesting if he or she has any flaws. And a story is only interesting to us humans, if it contains conflict, because there's so much conflict in our own lives. We need to draw parallels. And where is the feeling of anxiety if a reader already knows that everything will be fine because the character can snap their fingers or wiggle their nose and everything will get reset to zero, or nobody gets hurt, or everybody lives, or there's a happy ending? Because life doesn't work like that. The real world doesn't work like that. Crap happens. And when crap happens, when it does, there is a real sense of loss. And there is even anxiety when crap doesn't happen, because we all know that it will come. And there ain't much you and I can do about it either, because crap is in the world and crap will happen. So your fictional world should deal with this actuality too. It should deal with the actuality that bad stuff will happen, and there's not much that any of your characters, no matter how brave, no matter how noble they are, can do about it. But there just might be a secret, hidden knowledge. It might be a rare and dangerous cure, or some person out there, 1 in a million, who has an incredible gift. Or there might be some potion, or some kind of cure, but it's so rare, somebody might find it. But of course, if that miraculous knowledge really is out there, and I'm talking about in real life now, not in your fantasy fiction, but if that miraculous knowledge really is out there, then it must be extraordinarily rare, or extremely unreliable, or incredibly expensive, or most likely all three. Otherwise, everybody, but especially the wealthy and the very powerful, but everybody would have access to it, wouldn't they? And in fact, the selfish rich would probably squirrel away magic for themselves if it existed. They'd squirrel it away and keep it for themselves and their own families. And in fact, Queen Elizabeth I actually did have her own wizard. His name was Dr. John Dee. I covered him in an earlier show, who did have some extraordinary powers. And of course, other famous historical rulers, especially the pharaohs in Egypt and many others, had their own wizards. Now, we know that Harry Potter and his friends worked very hard to be good at their magic. And magic is not easy and it is not free. Because if magic was free and it was easy, then everybody would do it. So you can discount that for a start. It's hard. If magic was free and if magic was easy and if magic was commonplace, then we would have no hunger and no poverty and no disease and no crime and no disorder and no chaos and no anxiety in the world. But, as we all know, everyone isn't a wizard. Very few are. And why is that? Is it because only a small elite group have the innate talent to be wizardly, or were born blessed with some special characteristics that make them more magical than others? Or are so few likely to become magical because it is extremely difficult, it requires a huge amount of work, great effort, over years of devotion, perhaps a lifetime of dedication, and will have have other costs and burdens too, perhaps hidden, that are directly imposed on that individual. I equate becoming a wizard as similar to becoming a very good first-class musician. So let me take you through the parallels. It takes hours and days and weeks of practice to become a very good musician. You must focus on your talent morning, noon and night. You must dedicate your whole being to music. Every ounce of your energy, every thought, every word, every action. And even your dreams must be consumed by music. In fact, you probably won't sleep or rest or play because that would hamper your music practice. And you'll know all the time that practice makes perfect. And soon, the only thing important to you is mastering your craft. And I think music and magic are similar. Magicians are like musicians. So while Harry Potter and his friends are making a supreme effort to become better magicians, other average people like you and me are casually wasting our time having romances, playing sports, listening to parents moaning, living upstairs in a bedroom and not in a remote castle miles away from our families. We're dating, we're learning to drive, we're playing computer games, we're listening to pop music, we're going to fast food restaurants, we're buying clothes online. But the adept, he or she abandons all these things to improve his or her craft. So what type of magic do you want to create? Do you want to create ceremonial magic or sympathetic magic? I've already covered those two categories in a previous show, so you'll need to listen to that. And why are you wanting to use magic in your fantasy fiction novel? How will it propel the plot? How will it add new dimensions? How will it change or motivate characters? How will it push along events? How will it add tension? And how will it add drama? And don't forget Chekhov's gun principle, which I've covered in a previous show, where he says, if you show a gun in the early part of the first scene, then the gun must be used by the end of the story. There's no point in somebody having magic, no point in somebody possessing magic if that magic isn't used. Now, I want you to check out the 3 main points of creating a magical system. These are the 3 points that I want you to bear in mind, because if you don't bear these in mind, then your magical system won't be believable. Main point number 1, magic shouldn't exist without a need for it, nor without favourable conditions, and nor without a trained and committed magician, who I will refer to as the adept. So you'll need to determine the following: the need for magic in your fictional world, why it is required, what is its function? For example, does it replace technology or medicine or chemistry? And if it does replace those things, then you must remember that you'll have to write your story with the consequences of having no technology or medicine or chemistry. For example, if everybody in your society that you've created out of your imagination are telepaths, then there's no need to have mobile phones. If 1 in every 100 persons can cure another person, then there's no need for medicine. Do you understand? Also, try to consider how your world, the world you create, would be different without magic. And even the story itself, would the story at all be different without magic? Could the story be told without magic? I mean, I would recommend that you ask yourself about your fictional world and think about what it would be like with and then without magic. Test a few ideas and speculate on outcomes. For example, could the monster be defeated another way? Could the princess be saved by cunning and wit and strength rather than magic? Could an invading force be held back without a magical staff? Think of Moses. Perhaps if he'd waited a little bit longer, he might have found a surge tide and he could lead his people across the Red Sea before that surge tide happened, and he wouldn't have had to raise his staff and ask for magic to help. So think about all the other possibilities. Do you need magic? Then ask, who is the adept? And why are these type of character adept? For example, they may be elves, so they might have evolved magical prowess over millennia. Or maybe they come from a lineage or an underclass like Romany gypsies, so they've got a long history of learning and practicing magic within their hereditary group. So for example, a Romany boy might be taught how to read the future by his grandma. Or maybe they're specially recognised individuals who get taken away and isolated and contained in a castle for training for long periods of time. These are the so-called magician's apprentices, and like Harry Potter and his pals. And how long would it take your adept to become fully proficient in his or her wizardry? Would it take many years? Would it take a lifetime? Or, just like a musician, would they never be satisfied with their own proficiency? Would they never become fully skilled? Perhaps like medical surgeons, they would have to practice and rehearse their skills always over and over, almost every day, to get better and better. Main point number 2. Magic has a cost, and that cost must be paid, and it must be paid by someone or something. So magic ought to cost. You know that if you went to a gypsy fortune teller, she'd ask you to pass a few silver pieces over. The cost might be effort, or it might be outlay, or it might be some handsome price. You remember the show before last, I was talking about talismans, and I was saying that a talisman has to be powered, but it's normally powered by effort. But it does cost as well, and it's an expensive thing. Perhaps your magic must require a larger sacrifice, something that can't be given up easily. In the book of Gypsy Magic, it was suggested that sometimes the cost is patience. You know, if you made a puppet because you wanted to attract another person to you, so this is going to be a bit of sympathetic magic to attract another person in a love date. The cost is patience. It's not going to happen in 24 hours. It's not going to happen in a week. It might happen in a year or even 2 years. In main point number 3, I want to tell you about esotericism. Magic is esoteric. What does that mean? Well, esoteric means it's a secret and it's kept by a few. So talking about the book of Gypsy Magic again, you are told that if you are going to undertake some kind of spell or work on some kind of potion or even create some kind of magic, you tell no one, nobody at all. It's secret. Have you ever wondered why Hogwarts is a castle that's protected by walls and a moat and loads of enchantments and spells, and it's impossible for a muggle to locate? Or why the candidates for the Jedi Order are taken away from their parents at the age of 5 and they're asked to release all earthly attachments and to let go of everything they've always grown to love before they begin a journey of initiation. Or that stage magicians belong to a secretive magic circle. Well, the answer to all of those 3 is because magic is esoteric. Esoteric. It's derived from the ancient Greek adjective esoterikos, which means to belong to an inner circle. And it came to define in ancient Greek civilization as anybody who might belong to a subculture or a clique that is outside normal religious ideas or normal viewpoints. Or that person has ideas that are at odds with secular culture or established science. Or their members claim to have a higher knowledge. So think, of course, of the Jedi Knights. An expert in magical esotericism was the English historian Francis Yates, who studied in depth the lives of wizards such as the Renaissance heretic Giordano Bruno. She concluded that there were 6 types of esotericism, and I'm going to list them for you. These are in my own words, by the way. Number 1, the idea of correspondences. This is the idea that there are symbolic and real correspondences between all things in the universe. For example, the stars above us act in the same way and even look the same as the atoms below us and the atoms that we are constructed of. And this is correspondence. This is that the microcosm corresponds with the macrocosm. Number 2, the idea of living nature. This is the argument that the natural universe is imbued with its own life force and is a living organism in its own right. So think about the use of the Force by the Jedi. Number 3, the idea of mediation. This is the idea that some people act as conduits for mediation, and that accompanied by rituals and symbolic images and mandalas and intermediate spirits and mantras, these people can provide access to hidden worlds or other levels of reality. So here you could think of witch doctors, but also most priests do act as mediators because they are the conduits that people use to reach the higher levels. Number 4 is the idea of the transmutation experience, and this is the emphasis on transformation through practice. So, for example, superpowers can be obtained through some kind of spiritual transformation, and here you should be thinking about Gandalf the Grey, how he becomes Gandalf the White. And then number 5 is the order of concordance. You know, many esotericists believe that there is a fundamental unifying principle for all religions and all spiritual practices in the world. The principle of this idea, the idea of concordance, is that upon reaching this unifying principle, then all the different beliefs in the world will unite into one. For this, you need to look at the lyrics of John Lennon's song Imagine. And number 6, the idea of transmission. In esotericism, due to its secret nature, the emphasis on transmitting teachings is through a process of initiation. That's why Harry Potter has to go through so many initiations. These allow the apprentice to gain access into the elite magic circle. But in your story, if you are going to use the magic, and if you are going to think about using esotericism, ask some questions. For example, what happens to those initiates who fail to make the grade? Don't forget, they've already learned some of the secrets. Will they have to be killed? Or are they in some other way silenced? So you need to put a lot of thought into creating a system of magic. Don't forget that magic shouldn't exist unless there's a need for it. Magic has a cost, and that cost must be paid in full. And magic is esoteric. Wildflower of the week, anemone. In my front yard, we call it a front garden in England, under an upright blue juniper tree that my mum gave me several years ago and which she grew from seed, I have grown over last year anemones, Anemones. They bloom at this time of the year, and they really are quite startling in their beauty. And I've attached a photo of my anemones in my show notes at neilmach, all one word, neilmach.me. And I've also added a very short video, which I'll explain in a second. Anemone means daughter of the wind, and it comes from the ancient Greek word anemos, which means wind. And the Roman poet Ovid, who was born in 43 BC, suggests that the plant was created by the goddess Aphrodite, who's known in the Roman pantheon as Venus, after her mortal, as in her human lover, Adonis, was gored by a wild boar and was killed by the boar. And according to the story, Aphrodite's tears at his death, which were mixed with his blood, gave rise to the anemone. But also the name is used as a wind flower, and so you could also call an anemone a wind flower, because anemos means the wind. Now, these origin stories reflect the dual meaning of the arrival of the spring breeze. And when you look at my very short video on my show notes, you'll see that the wind flower nods its acceptance of the spring breeze. It also, I said it had a dual meaning, it also means the death of a loved one. And so that's why there's some Christian symbolism here as well. Because Lent and Easter are the times of renewal and rebirth. But they also bring, of course, death. Death has to come before resurrection. And in the same way, the anemone remains hidden underground and it doesn't emerge until Lent. And when it emerges, of course, it springs out of the ground a thing of beauty. Now, when I got mine, I planted little hard nuggety bulbs, quite small, about as big as my fingernail, and they were very, very hard, so they needed to be soaked in water overnight before I planted them. And when it emerges, which it emerged about 7 days ago, just at the beginning of the isolation period, it came out with fern-like leaves and blossoms together. But of course that would all die away. It would all go back underground again. In the Victorian language of flowers, the anemone was represented a forsaken love of any kind. And according to Buckland's Book of Gypsy Magic, the Romany people considered the anemone to be a magical herb, and it was used to ward off pests, to ward off disease, and to ward off bad luck. Although some Eastern cultures believe that the anemone is a symbol of bad luck or ill tidings. So, the wildflower of this week is the anemone.